Right now, without you doing anything on purpose, trillions of tiny machines inside your body are reading instructions, building parts, burning fuel, and making copies of themselves. You are not really one single thing. You are more like a city of tiny living pieces, all working together so well that you get to sit here and watch a video about it. That is biology. And the strange part is that most people sat through years of it and still walked away thinking it was just a pile of words to memorize. Cells, DNA, mitochondria, evolution. Names with no map. So here is what we are going to do. We are going to build biology from the ground up in the right order, so every idea clicks into the one before it. By the end of this video, you will not just know the words, you will see how life actually fits together, from the smallest living piece all the way up to entire forests and oceans. No memorizing, just one connected picture. Hey, it is Daniel from Simplex Academy. If you want hard subjects explained clearly and calmly, the way they should have been the first time, subscribe and stick around. Let's make biology make sense. First, why should you care about any of this? Because biology is not a school subject that lives in a textbook. It is the operating system of your own body and everything alive around you. Why you get hungry, why you heal, why you look a little like your parents, why some medicines work, why a forest stays balanced, why you age. Every one of those is biology. Once you can see the system, the world stops feeling random and starts feeling readable. So let's start with the one sentence that holds the whole subject together. Biology is the study of life. That is it. How living things are built, how they stay alive, and how they change over time. Everything else we talk about is just a deeper look at one of those three things. Keep that in your pocket. Built, stay alive, change over time. Now, where do we begin? With the smallest piece that still counts as alive. That piece is the cell. A rock is not alive, a drop of water is not alive, but a single cell is. It takes in materials, it uses energy, it responds to its surroundings, and it can make a copy of itself. That is the line between living and non-living, and the cell is the smallest thing that crosses it. So what is a cell, really? Picture a tiny factory sealed inside a thin, flexible wall. That wall is not just a bag. It is a smart border that decides what comes in and what goes out. Inside, there are little workstations, each doing a job. Some build things, some break things down, some store information, some make energy. A single cell is busier than a whole city, and it is so small that millions of them would fit on the tip of a pin. Here is something that surprises people. You are not made of one kind of cell, you are made of trillions of them, in hundreds of types. Skin cells, muscle cells, nerve cells, blood cells. Same basic factory, set up for different jobs. And every time you heal a cut, you are literally watching cells make fresh copies of themselves to fill the gap. So when biologists say everything alive is made of cells, they mean it completely. A tree, a fish, a mushroom, you. All cities of cells. So what runs the factory? What tells each cell what to build and how to behave? That is our next link in the chain, and it is the famous one, DNA. Inside almost every one of your cells is a set of instructions written in a special code, and that instruction set is DNA. Think of it as the master manual for building and running you. Now here is the part nobody explains clearly. DNA is written with only 4 letters, just 4. They repeat in different orders, like a language with a tiny alphabet but very long words. And the order of those letters is the information. Change the order, and you change the instructions. So this incredibly long molecule, coiled up tight inside a cell too small to see, is basically a book written in a 4-letter language, and that book describes how to build a living thing. Quick recap before we go further because these first links matter. Life is built from cells, the smallest living pieces, and inside those cells sits DNA, the instruction manual written in a 4-letter code. Cell is the factory, DNA is the manual. Hold those two together because the next idea connects them. So what does the manual actually contain? It is not one giant instruction. It is broken into many smaller ones, and each individual instruction is called a gene. A gene is just a section of the DNA that describes one specific thing to build. One gene might carry the instructions for part of your eye color, another for a piece of how your blood carries oxygen. You have around 20,000 of these instruction genes, scattered along your DNA like chapters in a very long book. Why does that matter? Because it explains how you can be so similar to your parents and still completely your own person. You inherited your genes from them, half from each. Same manual style, slightly different wording. That is why families share features, but no two people are exactly alike. The gene is the unit of inheritance. It is the thing that gets passed down. But a gene is just an instruction sitting on a page. Instructions do not do anything by themselves. Something has to read them and actually build the part. So what does the building? This is the next link, and it is the one most people never really get told. Proteins. Proteins are the workers and the building materials of life, all in one. Here is the simplest way to see it. A gene is a recipe. A protein is the dish that recipe makes. The cell reads a gene, follows the instructions, and assembles a protein. And proteins do almost everything. They form the structure of your muscles, they carry oxygen in your blood, they fight off invaders, they speed up the chemical reactions that keep you alive. When you eat protein in food, your body breaks it down and uses the pieces to build its own. Most of what you think of as your body, the working parts of it, is protein built from instructions in your genes. So look at the chain we have now. DNA is the full manual. A gene is one instruction in it. A protein is what that instruction actually builds. From a four-letter code to a living, working part of you. That single flow, DNA to gene to protein, is the central idea of all of modern biology. If you only remember one thing from this video, remember that arrow. The manual is read and the worker is built. Let me show you that arrow in action with a quick example. Somewhere in your DNA is a gene that affects the color of your eyes. The cell reads that gene and builds a protein that helps control a pigment. More of that pigment, and your eyes look brown. Less, and they look lighter. You did not choose it. A gene was read, a protein was built, and a visible result appeared. That is the whole machine, running quietly in something as simple as eye color. Now all this building takes energy. A factory needs power, and so does a cell. So where does the energy come from? This is the next link. Energy and metabolism. Metabolism is just a big word for all the chemistry your body uses to turn fuel into usable energy and into new parts. When you eat, your body breaks the food down into simple sugars and other small pieces. Then, deep inside your cells, those sugars are combined with the oxygen you breathe, and that reaction releases energy. Here is the clean way to picture it. Your cells run on a kind of rechargeable energy currency. Food and oxygen go in, energy gets packaged into that currency, and the cell spends it to do work. Building proteins costs energy. Moving costs energy. Even thinking costs energy. This is why you breathe and why you eat. You are constantly refueling trillions of tiny machines. It is also why you feel tired when you are low on food or sleep, and why you breathe harder when you run. Your cells are simply asking for more fuel and more oxygen to keep the reactions going. The energy was never really about willpower. It was always about chemistry. And plants, by the way, do the reverse trick. They capture sunlight and use it to build their own sugar from air and water. That is photosynthesis, and it is where almost all the energy in living things originally comes from. The sun feeds the plants feed everything else. Let's pause and look at the map so far because we have actually covered a lot. Cells are the living factories. DNA is the manual inside them. Genes are the individual instructions. Proteins are what those instructions. That's a picture of how one living thing is built and stays alive. Now we get to the third part of our one-sentence definition, how life changes over time. For that, we need to go back to copying. Remember, a cell can make a copy of itself. Do that, it copies its DNA. Now, copying a book that long, billions of letters, almost perfect, but not quite. Every so often, a letter gets changed. That small change in the DNA is called a mutation. Mutations do nothing at all. Some are harmful, but once in a while, change is actually useful. And that rare useful change is the seed of one of the biggest ideas in all of science. That idea is evolution. And here is where everyone gets it slightly wrong. So let's be careful. Evolution is not an animal deciding to change itself. A giraffe did not stretch its own neck longer. What actually happens is this. Within any group of living things, There is natural variation because of those tiny differences in DNA. Some of an individual a little better at surviving offspring in its particular environment. Those individuals pass their genes on more often. The next generation has more of the helpful version. Repeat that across thousands of generations, and the whole group slowly shifts. So what is really happening? The environment is doing the choosing. It quietly favors whatever works, generation after generation. That is why it is called natural selection. Nobody is steering it. There is no plan. There is just variation and survival and time. A lot of time. And from that simple, patient process, you get everything from the shape of a bird's beak to the fact that some bacteria can survive the medicines we use to beat them. Evolution is not a theory about the past sitting in a museum. It is happening right now, every time life makes a slightly imperfect copy of itself. Quick recap, because that was a dense one. Life changes because DNA copying is not perfect. Those small changes are mutations. Helpful mutations get passed on more often because the individuals carrying them survive and reproduce more. Over enough time, the whole group changes. That is evolution by natural selection, variation, plus survival, plus time. Now let's zoom back out to a single body, because so far we have talked about single cells. How do you get from a tiny cell to a whole creature that can walk and think? The answer is teamwork, and it happens in levels. Cells of the same type group together and become a tissue. Muscle tissue, for example, is just a huge team of muscle cells. Then different tissues combine to build an organ, like your heart or your lungs, each one a structure with a specific job. Then organs that work toward the same goal form an organ system, like your digestive system or your nervous system. And all those systems together make one complete living organism. You. Why does seeing those levels matter? Because it is how the whole body suddenly makes sense as one connected design. A single heart cell can twitch, but billions of them! Organized into heart muscle, shaped into an organ, wired into a system, can pump blood for 100 years without stopping. The power, well, it is in the organization. Small pieces, teamed up in layers, doing together what none could do alone. But life does not stop at the edge of one body, and neither does biology. This is the next link out. Living things interact with other living things and with their surroundings, and that web of interaction is an ecosystem. Plants capture the sun's energy. Animals eat the plants. Other animals eat those animals. And tiny living things break down whatever dies and return the raw materials to the soil, so plants can use them again. Energy flows through, materials get recycled, and the whole system tends to balance itself. So, what does that give us? It gives us the biggest level of the map. The same energy that started as sunlight, got captured by a plant, and packaged into sugar, ends up powering a fox or a person or a mushroom, and then cycles back around. Life is not a set of separate creatures. It is one connected flow, and an ecosystem is what that flow looks like when you step far enough back. And finally, the newest part of the story, modern biology. Now that we can actually read DNA, the whole subject has turned a corner. We can look at the manual directly. We can find which gene instruction is linked to which trait or condition. We can study how living things are related by comparing their DNA letter by letter. This is changing medicine, food, and our understanding of ourselves faster than almost anything in science. It is the reason an ancestry test can read your DNA and trace where your family came from, and the reason scientists can study a new virus by reading its genetic code within days. The same chain we just built, from DNA to proteins to whole living things, is now something we can read and, increasingly, understand on purpose. So let's talk about why biology felt so confusing in the first place, because I think you can already see it. The problem was never that the ideas were too hard. The problem was the order. Most classes throw the vocabulary at you all at once. Mitochondria, ribosome, chromosome, allele, on day one, before you have any frame to hang them on. Of course, it felt like memorizing a phone book. The fix is exactly what we just did. Start with the cell, follow the instructions to the proteins, add the energy, allow the copying errors, let time do the rest, and team the cells up into bodies and ecosystems. In the right order, each word is just a label for a piece you already understand. A couple of other common mix-ups now that you have the map. DNA, gene, and chromosome are not three separate things. A chromosome is just DNA packed up tightly for storage. A gene is one instruction along that DNA. They are the same material at different zoom levels, and bacteria and viruses are not the same thing either. A bacterium is a tiny living cell that can survive and copy itself on its own. A virus is not really a full living thing at all. It cannot reproduce by itself. It has to hijack one of your cells to make more of itself, which is exactly why the medicines that work on bacteria do nothing to a virus. All right, let's put the whole map together in 1 minute, because this is the part worth keeping. Biology is the study of life, built, staying alive, and changing over time. First, life is made of cells, the smallest living factories. Second, inside each cell is DNA, the instruction manual written in a 4-letter code. Third, a single instruction in that manual is a gene. Fourth, the cell reads genes to build proteins, the workers that do almost everything. Fifth, all of that building runs on energy, pulled from food and oxygen, and originally from the sun. Sixth, because DNA copying is not perfect, life varies, and over long stretches of time, the environment selects what works, which is evolution. Seventh, cells team up into tissues, organs, and systems to make whole bodies. And eighth, bodies interact in ecosystems where energy and materials flow and recycle. That is the entire subject, connected in one breath. That is biology, from the smallest living piece all the way out to a living planet. Not a pile of words, one connected map of how life is built, how it runs, and how it changes. And once you can see the map, every detail you ever learn after this has a place to live. So here is my question for you. Which part do you want to zoom into next? DNA and how it is actually read? Evolution in more depth? How a single cell really works on the inside? Tell me in the comments and I will build that one next, just like this. I am Daniel, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.